There had been many moments in my life that I had considered to be consequential, moments of desperation and terror, as well as moments of joyous change. In my earlier years, I attended a university within my kingdom's capital, and being from a small village on the outskirts of the kingdom, one with no notable achievements, the decision to attend a university had many consequences. Consequences for me, consequences for the kingdom, and consequences for my home. The village I came from was small, even by the standards of smaller villages, consisting of a little more than a general store, the residential housing, and the mayoral's home. It could be trodden across in a mere few moments. The people of the village made their living by working in the fields, growing various crops from season to season. It would be common for the villagers to subside on nothing but those crops during the winter months, and because of that, I will never be able to eat corn and enjoy it again. We worked the field for long and arduous hours, starting in the early twilight and only stopping when the dusk settled in. We had pushed our bodies to the brink, and many times past that limit. Often collapsing from exhaustion, there were so many injuries, many of which were easy to treat, but too often a villager would lose a foot to gangrene from not being able to properly disinfect the wound. It was when a villager slipped off the roof while reshingling it that I came to the conclusion that a village must have a doctor, and I believed myself to be the best one to fit that role. The villagers and the mayor all agreed that this was something that must be done, and so, pooling together what resources they were able to, they sent me to the capital to attend the university. I would become the doctor that my village needed. The kingdom was huge beyond my comprehensions, buildings that raised dozens of feet up into the air, and streets made from stone. I would say that for a country bumpkin such as myself, it was overwhelming. It was when we reached the university that I was truly awestruck. Gazing upon such a magnificent structure gave me chills all throughout my body. It was both unnerving and exciting knowing I would be spending my days there. My time at the university was simple. I went to my classes each day, I did the work that I was assigned. I participated in class discussions and even studied on my own to gain an advantage. The people of the university spoke with such upscale and aristocratic accents that I felt remorseful to reveal my own country tongue. As a result, I spent much of my time avoiding the other students, and eventually I was known for my reclusiveness. But, despite these efforts, it didn't last very long. One morning, after receiving a seating assignment for a class, I went to my specified location, and it turned out the seat was in between two people who were already friends. Even before I sat down, they were happily conversing between themselves without any regard for me or the others behind them. And after introducing myself, they cheerfully made way for me to sit down, only to continue their conversations right over my head as if I wasn't there. I was rather shy, and I didn't know what to make of it, though I was far more distressed and confused when they started including me in the conversation. What kind of magic focus would I use? I didn't know anything about magic focus, and I was dumbstruck by the question. But the look on this man's face, Emerson. His name was Emerson Gray. It was so genuine and enthusiastic. I didn't expect my salvation to come from behind me when a woman piped up to answer on my behalf. Lydia Black, incredibly adept at anything academic. She is a master of her art. The reply came from a woman sitting to my side opposite of Emerson, the one that he was conversing with when I first arrived. This woman, Emerson's friend, she was far different in my eyes. Far different. Her voice was melodic and absorbing. It reverberated in my ears like the sound of a beautiful bell, and it struck my heart like a bolt of lightning conjured from my very soul. That was my first experience with love. Taking every opportunity I could to talk with her, our relationship grew and blossomed. We spent most of our free time together, studying, attending plays, and opening our souls. When I was with her, I felt like I could achieve anything, and I know that I was a better person for it. Along with Emerson and Lydia, the four of us had gained a reputation for our successes, and together, Emerson, Lydia, Adelind, and I became known as the Collegiate, and later on we were assigned a nickname. These were my halcyon days, my carefree days of comfort and joy. Emerson became my closest friend. We would compare notes and challenge each other to be better. A man who congratulated the victor even if that meant he was to be the loser. Honorable, kind, and intelligent. Emerson Gray would later be known as the Bachelor. Lydia's mind was that of legend. The concoctions and spells she could devise were on the level of a true master, which is likely why her handle became the Master. I feel that they didn't put much effort into my name since I was already studying to be a doctor. And unfortunately for Adeline, she got her name by process of elimination. She says that she doesn't mind it, but answering to the associate would certainly bother me. In time, I graduated with my doctor and returned to my village. Much to my joy, Adeline had agreed to join me. It truly felt like my life was complete. We both used our talents for the sake of the village. I treated all the villagers with kindness and respect, and Adeline used her skill to concoct medicine to be sold at the general store. The village's health improved, and the village became more prosperous over time. I grew more experienced in medicine, and the better I got, the more confident I became. Years had gone by, and I had made a name for myself as the village doctor. I would even get patients from other areas seeking my aid. My reputation had truly preceded me. Over time, I had adopted Adeline's aristocratic accent, and I had felt more at home in my station. I had even adopted the mannerisms and conceit of an aristocrat. After all, I am a doctor. It was in the next fall that things took a turn for the worst. It started with a sickness spreading from household to household and the people complaining of difficulty to breathe. I was annoyed with such a simple request, but I dutifully attended my patients to cure them of this unsightly illness. I didn't expect to still be treating them a week later. The sickness was holding on much more firmly than any others, and I began to wonder if this was something outside of my expertise. Being unable to accept that, I stubbornly continued treating my patients as if there was nothing out of the ordinary. And it took almost no time at all before my hospital was filled to the brim with people suffering from this strange affliction. Adeline confronted me at this point and demanded that I return to the kingdom and ask for help, to swallow my stubborn pride for the betterment of the village. I couldn't accept it, though. I would not be beaten by a mere illness. I will defeat it. I am the doctor. Months went by and things didn't get any better. People began to die left and right, but stubbornly I pressed on while Adeline begged me to seek aid. But instead, I reacted in a rage, demanding she keep her mouth shut. I was to be the one to cure this plague, and by that time I had accepted that's what it was, a plague. A mysterious pestilence has risen from the land to decimate the people of my village. As more days went by, I became obsessed with my work, poring over my notes and texts from everywhere I could find, in hopes to find anything that would assist me in my research. I didn't notice when Adeline left. I had stopped sleeping in our bed some time before, and she had stopped coming to plead with me to get help. None of it bothered me anyway. I would defeat this plague, this pestilence. Another month goes by, and more than half the villagers have died from this plague, and half of those remaining were dying in my hospital. I had lost all reason at this point. I no longer heard the wails of my patients, and I no longer cared for the pleas of the villagers. Endlessly I poured through the pages and notes looking for the answer, and I was close to developing a cure. I had even begun to ransack the houses of the dead in hopes to find any sort of information that could be useful. It was when I reached the mayoral residence that I found what I didn't know I was looking for. Stepping over the threshold of this decrepit and ancient house, I felt the floorboards creak beneath my feet. My footsteps echoed in the entryway, and bits of dust floated around the light of my lantern. The dust was not bothersome. At this point I had already donned my plague doctor's mask to protect myself from the pestilence. The manor had been there long before the rest of the village. It was once a great estate that spanned over many acres, but the former lord had met a gruesome end after being convicted of kidnapping and murder. The victim's remains were found in the cellar, and so that is where I intended to go. Well down there, a draft revealed to me a door beneath the cellar, and, inside there, a cave entrance. Only a few feet inside was a shrine, and that shrine was dedicated to a god that I did not know. Placed upon the shrine, though, was a book bound in leather with what looked to be a human eye carved into the cover. It had no title, and the pages were written by hand. I took this book back to my residence and pored over it feverishly. I did not make any progress, though, as the very next day after this happened, I woke up to the sound of cavalry exiting my home. I stared wide-eyed and in shock to see 10,000 of the kingdom's troops coming from over the ridge and lined all the way up to the entrance of my village. But, to my surprise, none of them were coming in. I couldn't remember the last time I removed my plague mask, but seeing this with my own eyes was the only way I would have been able to believe it. After it was off, I noticed that there was a commotion on the front line. Adeline was with the soldiers. She was at the front of the line trying to push her way past some guards. I realized then that Adeline never planned for this. She was trying to get back in, and the soldiers would not allow her. I was certain that the soldiers were going to charge in to eliminate the plague by force. But as the men came to attention and spread out, not a single one came in the direction of the village. Instead, they made a circle around the entire village and created an unbreakable perimeter. No one was going to get in, and especially no one would get out. Killing those who are plague-ridden is a travesty in itself, but doing it quickly could be called a mercy. The kingdoms cut my village off from the outside. Their plan was to wait until we died on our own. After all, why risk the soldiers getting infected when all you have to do is watch us die? I had returned to my manor at this point, understanding there was no immediate danger. My mind was scattered and broken. Adeline's tears told me that we were not to survive. So, sitting at my fire, I began to regret the choices that I made. If I had gone before the kingdom before it had gotten this bad, would we still be in this situation? It didn't matter. I had work to do. I worked fast and without rest through the next few nights. I lost many patients using desperate tactics that didn't pay off. But I could not slow down. I combined my medical knowledge with the contents of that book. I carved, cut, and sliced open my patients and altered their biology to be able to withstand this pestilence. The army stayed on the outskirts of town, and still I worked. Death after death, I worked. Failure after failure, I worked. Through trials and tribulations, by the end of that month, I had made a breakthrough. I had endured countless sleepless nights, and I had tried so many desperate plans. Every time I had thought I was coming close to the cure, it eluded me and left me dumbstruck and lost. The more desperate I became, the greater risks I would take. In the end, it paid off. My first success was that of a young woman. Her name was Deirdre Horton, and it was truly a miracle when she got up from the operating table. Still with the wound in her chest and bleeding, she was strong enough to stand on her own. And though it took some convincing, I managed to get her to let me close it up all the way. After that, I brought in patient after patient and used this incredible medical technique on them. One by one, they all opened their eyes and sat up. Mere moments after the surgery, they were able to exit my building on their own. I had truly created a perfect cure. A cure so potent that when I attempted to use it on one of the freshly dead villagers, they were cured as well. People who have been lifeless for as long as a week were walking through the village alive and in good health. They didn't have much to say in way of thanks, but I didn't mind. They were my villagers, and I have gotten my villagers back. I slept soundly that night. I didn't hear the commotion outside, and I didn't even wake up when the screams started. I woke the next morning, went downstairs and dressed, and I exited my home calmly. I didn't look back as I stepped over the first soldier's body, and I smiled warmly at the other villagers already roaming the streets, and I take notice that the blockade is already gone. Turning the corner to my hospital, I take no notice of the blood and chunks of viscera lining the walls and street, and I open my door to greet my nurses. They are truly wonderful nurses, even if the light is gone behind their eyes and they're no longer interested in anything in terms of conversation. Now I reside within the mayoral residence and do my research in the basement where I found my beloved book, and I have made several improvements to my cure since I began. The villagers are already back working in the fields, and with my cure, they no longer have to worry about illness or injury. I do miss conversation, and I miss Adeline greatly, but after her betrayal, I do not know if I could come to trust her again. My village has become prosperous and my people are strong. If you were to come here seeking aid, you would have nothing to worry over. After all, my cure is most effective.